Prime Minister Howard met with a group of 20 Newcastle steelworkers, headed by Murray Rudd of the AWU and Dennis Nichols from the Newcastle Trades Hall Council. The delegation told Mr Howard that BHP should keep steel production in Newcastle. But the union says if the big Australian doesn't change its mind, it should at least sell the operation to another player. Mr Howard agreed to a high-level task force of local community representatives to advise the government on the social implications of the impending closure. Such a task force would report direct to the Prime Minister. Later, during question time in Parliament, Mr Howard announced he will visit Newcastle at the end of next month.
By far the most interesting comment that was made to me by Mr Rudd and indeed by the delegation was the observation that, as he put it, the last thing the blokes are interested in is you and the Labor Party sludging each other on this particular issue.
And I wanted my mum to win a holiday for all of us and the Medina on Crown in Surrey Hills.
The controversy over the Dross plant reached boiling point late today. Cessnock Council voting to let the public have their say on new plans for the facility. It's the second time in as many weeks Council has deferred a decision on approving Western Aluminium's building application. A company representative left the meeting stunned.
This council is not interested in investment in this area. They're out to hinder investment, and I think they're doing a great disservice to the unemployed in the Hunter.
The Dross plant has divided the coalfields community, some concerned over health risks from the plant, others claim it will be a job creator. Cessnock Mayor Merv Pine dismisses suggestions his council is employing delaying tactics.
Council has actually delayed this, I think it's 14 days, by advertising it. Will clarify it, and may well be that that is a big advantage to the applicant in the long term.
I would, consider that the council is acting most improperly and verging on a dereliction of duty.
The Dross plant issue will go back before the council for a vote in a fortnight. Blake Doyle, NBN News, late edition.
The Hornet made a spectacular entrance to RAF Base Williamtown earlier this year, the result of a mishap during takeoff from an American aircraft carrier. It's going home with its wings clipped, or more to the point, removed. The exacting task of pulling the jet to pieces and packing it away isn't being done by the Americans or even the RAF, but a civilian company.
It's not normal for the United States Navy to have a foreign contractor do this type of work. They tend to bring their own teams out from the continental US. we had to do a little bit of talking to convince them that we actually had the skills and the knowledge here to do the job.
The job, expected to take a month, will be completed a week early. For the team of technicians, it hasn't simply been a case of dismantling a highly sophisticated but damaged Meccano set. It's taken an intimate understanding of the fighter.
Despite being fairly robust in flight, when you pull it apart, it's a very, very delicate item. So everything has been packed in individual boxes and carefully mounted. It's been quite an exercise, in fact.
Aside from the fuselage, more than 1,000 components will be packed away into 23 crates. The US Air Force will fly its wounded bird home early next month. It'll be loaded into a giant C-5 Galaxy and flown to San Diego, where it will undergo up to 9 months of repair work. Phil Hind, NBN News. The Anglican Synod opened on a historic note at Christchurch Cathedral overnight. For the first time in 130 years, a Catholic delivered the sermon. The invitation to the Bishop of Maitland Newcastle, Michael Malone, was made in recognition that both the Anglican and Catholic churches are celebrating their 150th anniversaries. Attention today turned from prayer to debate on a range of politically sensitive issues. Church leaders dismissed suggestions that religion and politics shouldn't mix.
Whatever affects any human being is a part of religion's discipline. And so I don't see any reason why the church should not be. In fact, if it didn't, then we would be having an escapist type of religion, which I wouldn't want to be a part of.
Among the issues being tackled by the 300 delegates, the closure of BHP steelmaking, the High Court's Wick ruling and Pauline Hanson. The issue most likely to spark vigorous debate, though, is the question of monogamous de facto and same-sex relationships. Those behind the motion say they're not looking for a decision, but want to start a debate within the church.
Well, it's an issue that concerns many people who are actually within the church itself, and it's a driving issue in many people's lives, and to make the church relevant.
The Church's Social Questions Committee hopes a decision on same-sex relationships will be tackled by the Synod in 2 years' time. Phil Hind, NBN News.
What a difference 1 week can make. A fortnight ago, the Wildfires were the toast of the competition after scoring an upset win over Gordon. Last week, they were given a taste of their own medicine by Eastwood. Despite the big loss, Newcastle is confident of bouncing back. The buzzword at training this week has been determination.
Determination to turn it round and determination to get a win this week and prove that last week was a hiccup that we can overcome.
In the corresponding match last year, Newcastle won. The Wildfires will take that memory and the incentive of a berth in the top 5 into the clash against Uni.
If we could get the win this weekend, that would probably get us into the 5 or just one out, by ourselves. And then the one that we'd be vying with would be Parramatta, who we play next week. So it's a very important game to us.
The Newcastle Rugby Union returns to Saturday afternoon matches after last week's Steel City Challenge loss. Hamilton play the Waratahs, Singleton host Muswellbrook, Wanderers tackle East, while University meets Maitland. After last week's disappointing loss to Souths, Curry is back at home this weekend for the traditional Battle of the Coalfields. The Bulldogs host Cessnock in one of the 2 NRL games tomorrow. In the other match, Toronto plays Waratah Mayfield. There are 3 games on Sunday to complete the round. Home matches for Central Charlestown, Maitland and North Nelson Bay. And in this weekend's round of the NBN Soccer League, East Maitland meet Toronto, Cessnock plays Wallsend, Hamilton travels to Western, Belmont Swansea host Edgeworth, and in the match of the round, Highfields is at home to Broadmeadow. Jonathan Upton, NBN News.
many, Newcastle will always be the steel city, but that's an image the HEDC is determined to change. With a $10 million budget, it's working on a new identity for the BHP city, and tourism is a major part of that revamp.
The Hunter is already the most popular regional tourism destination in New South Wales, so there is a lot of potential, a lot of promise for tourism in this region.
In 1995 to 96, nearly 4 million people visited the Hunter region, spending more than $756 million. And the HEDC says there's plenty of room for growth. It wants to attract more tourism developers to the coastline and the valley, anything from 4-star hotels to wilderness tours. But the organisation says tourism isn't the only answer.
Tourism will not be the cure-all for this region. It is one growth industry and one that we should be nurturing.
Other industries it's looking to promote include defence, heavy engineering and manufacturing, agriculture and telephone information centres. Sarah Griffiths, NBN News.
A suburban street became the scene of a terrifying siege last November when a domestic dispute sparked a standoff at Rathmines, southwest of Newcastle. Michael Geddes threatened to kill himself and his son, a knife hidden in his clothes. Police tried to reason with the 31-year-old, but after 3 hours, conciliation turned to confrontation. Today, Wallsend Court was told Geddes lost control after being told his girlfriend, the mother of his child, was having an affair with another man. Geddes claims he never meant to endanger his son and was trying to hand over his weapon when pounced on by police. Both claims dismissed by the court. In sentencing, Magistrate Gould was asked to consider Geddes' past psychiatric problems, drug abuse and suicidal tendencies. Prior convictions for carnal knowledge and break, enter and steal were also taken into account. Geddes was convicted of assault on the baby and has been ordered to perform 200 hours community service. He escaped a jail sentence because he's already spent 6 weeks in custody undergoing psychiatric counselling. On a second charge of assault against a police officer, Geddes was placed on a $500 good behaviour bond. Richard O'Leary, NBN News.
26-year-old Stuart Sterling is the professional at Morisset Golf Club. It's an active life that just 2 years ago he thought he'd lost forever. Stuart was rushed to intensive care at Newcastle's John Hunter Hospital, suffering end-stage renal failure. His kidneys had stopped working and his body became riddled with toxins. The attack was sudden. Stuart given little warning of what was to happen.
I was feeling fine. I was playing golf, no troubles, and then after that I had like 2 weeks of probably flu-like symptoms.
Every year the hospital treats 80 new patients with end-stage renal failure. While most patients are over 50, a quarter of those diagnosed with kidney failure are young. That can mean hours on a dialysis machine or a kidney transplant. A simple kidney test can identify the condition early, which means the disease can then be kept under control.
We should be able to, if not reverse the process, at least slow the process down and try and stop people from going on to end-stage kidney failure.
As part of Kidney Week, doctors are urging people to visit their GPs for a test. 2 years after his transplant, Stuart is now helping to spread the message of early detection and has a new outlook on life.
Oh, great! You know, I love it now. I've changed my perspective on life altogether. Now I just get up in the mornings and think, well, I'm here, I can do what I want to do.
Sarah Griffiths, NBN News. Pacific Power wants to offload its site at Wangi and management is considering the options. With decommissioning virtually complete, the group is looking to sell the old power station on the international market. At Wangi Workers Club last night, 200 local residents met with Council and the Hunter Valley Research Foundation to talk about possible uses for the site. Architects also presented ideas for a multi-storey shopping complex. The majority of the gathering voted to keep the building, many claiming it has architectural significance. A working party has been established by Council to encourage community input. Sarah Griffiths, NBN News. Like any athlete, 2-year-old Smiling Thunder can tend to get a bit tight in the muscles. And when there's a big race coming up, that's not a good thing. So for Smiley, it's a trip to the vets for some acupuncture to relieve the tension. A relatively painless procedure that is over in a matter of minutes.
Because it works, you know, and it's simple. And there's no side effects.
Dr. David Larrett is one of a growing number of veterinarians practising alternative therapies, such as acupuncture, massage and homeopathy, along with more conventional medicine. While acupuncture has been around for thousands of years, its use in the treatment of arthritis, spinal problems and even paralysis in animals is becoming increasingly popular. For 7-year-old Cass, who came off second best after a kick from a cow, acupuncture may be her only chance to walk properly. Owner Bob McKittrick has driven 250 kilometres from Mudgee in the hope her paralysis can be cured.
If we can partly help her, it'll be good, yes. And that would be a start. Anything would be better than the way she is.
Dr Larratt says the results of so-called alternative therapies are often so successful that the owners turn to it themselves.
It's much easier for somebody to come in, put needles in their animal because they won't have needles in themselves, and if they get a bit of response, they'll maybe think about getting acupuncture done as well.
Sarah Griffiths, NBN News. The first thing competitors will tell you is it's not a race but a ride, a 160-kilometre journey that tests the fitness of both horse and rider. This year, the course winds through the Watercan Range. What started as a bet in a pub has become an internationally renowned event. This year's roll-up, the biggest organisers have seen. Now in its 32nd year, the Australian Quilty is the ultimate event for endurance riders, attracting competitors from throughout Australia and overseas. 72-year-old Bob Holding has come from Wales to take part.
It's something I've always wanted to do, and I've got my one chance and I'm doing it.
Richard Caldwell is the youngest competitor. The 11-year-old has his sights set on finishing and collecting one of the coveted belt buckle trophies.
Oh, I want the buckle and Dad's got one, so I want one too.
That's a sentiment shared by veteran of 16 quilties, Terry Wood. In recent years, tough regulations have been introduced to ensure the safety of horses. Riders must return to base camp 3 times to have their horses checked by one of 22 vets. While it may seem very calm, all that will change at midnight when 320 horses and their riders take to the starting line. Sarah Griffiths, NBN News.
A familiar tune was in the air last night. The national anthem brought more than 2,000 Novocastrians to their feet before the efforts of Butch Hayes and Scott McGregor commanded similar respect. Tony Jensen started where he left off last weekend, but the visitors were doing just as well at the other end of the court to build a lead of 7. Some fighting words from Sean Dennis and Scott McGregor landed 3. Nothing but brilliance from Ben Pepper. Down 1 at quarter time, the Falcons started slowly again and were soon faced with a 9-point deficit, but from there it all looked up. Newcastle's young guns were instrumental in the Falcons' comeback. Pepper, McGregor and Melmoth all joined in the action before the experience of Butch Hayes and Tony Jensen gave the locals the lead. An outstanding final quarter effort from Ben Pepper and Butch Hayes' 8 from 8 from the foul line in the final 4 minutes sealed the result. Newcastle home by 8. Outdoors and perfect conditions for the opening day's play in the State Netball Championships at National Park. More than 1,000 netballers are involved in the competition. Leading the early charge in the Open Division are the teams from Newcastle, Bankstown, Ku-ring-gai and Sutherland. Orange has made a solid start to the men's state hockey titles at Broadmeadow. Up in grade after victory in last year's B Division, Orange held its own in the clash with Goulburn, the sides having to settle for a 2-2 draw. Earlier in the day, Bathurst started its A title defence with a 4-3 victory over Newcastle.
Junior soccer training at Stevenson's Park continued as usual today, but the onlookers weren't so interested in the game. Instead, vocal protesters turned their attention to an opposing team which didn't even show. The former BHP dumping site accommodates 6 soccer fields, 2 of which sit on an area which was zoned for housing nearly 30 years ago. Now Newcastle Council has decided it wants to develop the site to raise revenue.
Council needs to rethink. Sell some of the buildings they have in town that are standing idle and useless. Don't sell off our parks.
So they've got a zoning map that shows them that the zoning for that land has been for a long time residential, and they've just proceeded on that basis. And so I don't think there's any need to accuse the council of operating inappropriately.
Armed with placards and petitions, the ralliers plan to march to Newcastle City Hall next month as part of their protest. Vanessa Spark, NBN News. The relaxed-looking picket line outside the mine today hid much of the defiance of 440 miners pushed to their limits. After 2 years of talks with the owners CRA, a subsidiary of Rio Tinto, the mining union says it is no further ahead in reaching an enterprise agreement and its patience has run out.
We are now convinced, it took a while to convince us, but I'm now convinced that the company aren't genuine. They don't want an enterprise agreement.
Mining trucks stood idle after CFMEU last night decided to hit CRA where it hurts with the 2-week strike.
Is potentially quite damaging. It costs around about $1 million a day in lost revenue.
The mine is the only one left in the Northern District with no enterprise deal. The union says its demands, based on award conditions, have been nothing more than reasonable. It's accused CRA of trying to undermine enterprise bargaining.
We believe that their strategy is to draw these negotiations out for as long as possible, frustrate the process and try and convince people to make individual arrangements with them.
But CRA refutes that and blames the union for the delays. The company says ongoing industrial action has affected the coal production at what is potentially the most profitable mine in the state.
We rate very low on the scale of productivity in mines in the Hunter Valley, and therefore it's important to improve the financial performance and the security of employees that we really lift the productivity of this mine.
The Industrial Relations Commission may now involve itself in negotiations. Simone Cobb, NBN News.
The 11-hectare site opposite Glendale Shopping Centre will soon be developed into a multi-million-dollar athletics and gymnasium centre. Lake Macquarie Council says it will be a boost for athletes throughout the region, particularly those at the elite level.
This region doesn't have a high standard athletics facility. Athletes are running on grass or on an old asphalt track in Newcastle.
Plans for the centre were first mooted 4 years ago. Since then, Council has been negotiating with the state government to secure a site and raise the necessary funds. At a meeting last night, it allocated $2.6 million to the project, the $1.4 million balance to be made up from government grants.
I think we'll certainly see growth in the sport, particularly with the Olympics in Sydney. There'll be a real incentive for young athletes to up their training levels.
The gymnasium is the second stage of the project and will be funded separately. Meanwhile, Lake Macquarie Council has announced a $20 fee to cover the new curbside recycling service which starts on the 23rd of June. Sarah Griffiths, NBN News.